Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark, and coming up on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Johannes Roberts, the up-and-coming British director that right now has released films like 47 Metres Down and most recently The Strangers, Pray at Night, the sequel to one of my favourite horrors, The Strangers, which still scares the crap out of me every single time I watch it, and the sequel did not let me down at all. It's a great film, and I urge you all to go and check it out. And this director has huge things ahead of him, so I'm so thrilled that he's going to join me on today's episode. Now, before we get into today's episode in more detail, what I do want to do is talk about the last episode. So I was joined by another up-and-coming British director, Tom Payton, and the episode did very well. The feedback was great. I got to read loads of Facebook comments and tweets and Instagram replies and emails, and what I did is I forwarded them all on to Tom, because Tom is a very cool guy. He has a lot of time for the fans, and he sat there and read them all, and me and him were kind of reading them and sending them on to each other, and it really did make his day. So thank you for everyone that took the time to listen, that then went and checked out the films like Panther or Redwood, and just go on there and leave Tom reviews on his IMDb page. It's a huge thing that I know he'll really appreciate. So thank you all for listening. But hey, let's get on to today's episode. As I said, I'm going to be joined by Johannes, an up-and-coming director that I think is going to be absolutely huge. He's got this absolute perfect eye for detail when it comes to kind of directing films, and to see the response that's gone down in the reviews for the Strangers sequel, I think he's going to go on to be huge. So I'm very excited that he's joined me today, and without me kind of blabbering on and talking loads of rubbish, let's get straight to the interview. So here you go. Okay, so my first question for you today is, when you were growing up, did you want to be an actor or a writer or a director? Did you have a quite clear vision at such a young age?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I wanted to be J.R. Tolkien, to be honest. I don't think I've ever answered that in an interview before. I was a bookworm nerd, and when I read Lord of the Rings, it just sort of blew my mind, and I just was obsessed with the whole fantasy world, and really that's just a precursor, because Lord of the Rings is a horror book. People are firing heads over the battlements, and you got sort of ring race, which I took and used in a movie I did called F. I really sort of referenced all that kind of stuff, but in a horror world. So I wanted to be a novelist, and I would write, I'd write stories about dwarves and goblins and stuff. Do you know what? I sort of just fell into the film world. Because of, after Tolkien, I discovered Stephen King, and then I absolutely fell in love with that world. And then through Stephen King, I discovered the King movies and, John Carpenter and stuff. And then I found that screenplays were the outlet for my writing, for my storytelling.
Brilliant. So at what age did you then kind of think, I want to be the guy behind the camera and try and capture this in my imagination, but as a context for a film?
Yeah, I think the first time I realised, oh yes, this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to go ahead, is actually watching Lewis Teague's Cujo, adaptation of Cujo, and there's just the most amazing sequence where you're misdirected, and you sort of feel that you're in the dog's POV, and you're really coming up behind Dee Wallace, who's sort of half in, half out of the car, and you're like, fuck, she's going to get, and then the dog comes in through the side window, and it's just so beautifully well constructed. And I remember, I think I was probably 16 at the time, I was like, this is, I love what this guy's doing here, and it just, I just thought, fuck yeah, this is where I want to go with it. I want to take my stories, and I want to scare people and tell those kind of creepy stories, and so it's reasonably early on, I think.
So you obviously mentioned John Carpenter, who I believe is an absolute genius. You've mentioned Stephen King. That's a really good list of influences. Now, you then went into doing horrors of your own, so you got the Roadkill TV movie, The Other Side of the Door, and one of the most recent films that I saw was the 47 Meters Down. Was that kind of influenced for you by the whole Spielberg's Jaws, or was it something else? Because it had that kind of... It didn't matter, I don't think, that it was the shark. It could have been any creature. It was the fear factor of just being so isolated on your own with nothing around you.
Yeah, that was kind of a two-pronged thing. I mean, I remember when doing the publicity for that, obviously I had to talk about Jaws a lot. I like Jaws a lot, but it's not... it was not the primary reference for that movie. When I was growing up and getting into these, getting into movies, the one sort of subgenre that I used to absolutely adore, or the idea of it I used to adore. They never really kind of nailed it. Was the underwater one, was the Abyss, was Leviathan, Deep Star Six. There was a period of time where they were doing these underwater things, and I just loved this underwater world, and then I'm a diver now, and I I love the underwater world. Whereas Jaws is always, obviously not about the underwater world, it's about the surface, and I was just obsessed with this sort of landscape, deep under the ocean. So that's really where it came from, and I'm obsessed with sharks as well. I love sharks. I'm always a little bit torn in terms of because sharks are, I think, such beautiful creatures, and we do such horrendous things to the world that I'm like, am I adding to it by creating a movie like 47 Meters Down, or am I inspiring someone to love sharks like I do by watching a movie like Jaws, where you're kind of like, oh, they're so scary, they're kind of cool. So I'm always a bit torn on that. But actually the references, like I say, were movies like The Abyss and Leviathan.
Beautiful. Now, there's quite a lot of horrors coming out every year. Obviously, we get an influx of remakes, but we also get some good original films like The Babadook, which I really enjoyed, The Descent, Dog Soldiers. But I genuinely put The Strangers up there as one of the best horrors in the last 10 years because I feel the threat is real. It's not some clown that really has stupid magical powers. It's someone knocking on your door and terrorising you. So what was your thoughts when you first got to see the original Strangers?
Yeah, I love the first movie. I think what the first movie did that really hasn't been done since, or certainly not as well, is just that it's the first 30, 45 minutes, just the most incredible opening to a movie. You really believe in that couple, and Brian's writing is he's a really good writer. It's phenomenal. He's a really good director. But the script is just really beautiful. Just what a concept. A guy asking a girl to marry him, and she said no.
Yeah.
And the movie starts with them going back to the romantic cottage. It sounds like a genius concept. And then sort of working its way all the way to the end, where she's touching the ring that she had tried on. And it was beautifully, really, really beautifully done. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Where I think Brian and I would part, on paths that we go, I'm not quite so nihilistic. I find the end of Strangers tough. It's very dark. It's very dark, and my sensibilities are not so dark. The way I would always explain it is, I think Brian's. If you ask Brian his the movie that would inspire him the most, it would be something I would guess. I can't say this for sure, but something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were to ask me, it would be Christine or The Fog. It would be a very John Carpenter, slightly more fantastical and less bleak reference, I think. But I love the first movie. I think it's great.
So at what point were you approached with the sequel? Because obviously, as a huge fan of the first one, you must have been a bit intimidated by the whole fact of, oh, well, they're quite big shoes to fill, and to do a sequel to such a classic is dangerous for some, you know? Not everyone would want to touch it.
Yeah, do you know what, I finished 47 Meters Down, and I was just doing dinner with the producers, and they said, look, the script of the movie had been kicking around for 10 years, to be honest, in development hell. And they said, look, we've got the rights to it. If you want to read it, are you interested? And I read it. Was obviously very well aware of that this could be horrendous for my career. Or just people, people could really, hate. It has a real potential to have a bad backlash. And I saw potential to do. I always wanted to really to go and have some fun with retro style filmmaking, getting the zoom lenses out the box, doing and sort of playing around with some of the old Carpenter movies, and just really having fun in that side of things. And I really saw potential with this movie to do that. I was like, yeah, let's try this. We'll pay homage to the first movie, and then take it off in its own direction. And it kind of works for that. But yeah, it was, believe me, I was very nervous because it was tricky as well. It's like, is this a sequel? Is it a reboot? Because 10 years is a long time in the horror landscape, and it was like, most of the audience that are going to come to see this were too young to see the first one, certainly in theatres, so it's like, where are we going with it? So there was a lot of issues in my mind, going around in my mind, and so it was tricky.
You've wrote and directed most of your main releases, especially like 47 Meters Down. What was it like taking on another person's screenplay? Was that quite easy to adjust, or would you prefer to always kind of have the ownership of everything that consists to make a movie?
No, not necessarily. As a writer-director, it's great because, I can then bring that skill to a screenplay, because, what you get is, you never get a script that's production ready, and so you have to then, use your skill as a writer to be able to make that happen. But I like working on other people's material because it's sort of very liberating. I used techniques and styles that I think maybe I wouldn't have on, say, a movie like Outside the Door, where I'm so close to the material and so personally involved in the material. Whereas with this, because there was a slight distance with it, I was able to be much freer with the styles and the tone that I used. So yeah, I think it's fun. I definitely, if a good script comes across my desk, I definitely relish that.
And what was it like working with someone so established like Christina Hendricks? I mean, one of the best actresses I know from TV. I was obsessed with Mad Men. You must have absolutely loved it when the casting call was for her.
Yeah, that was a strange one in that most times with movies you really you have a list and you go down the list until you find someone that says yes. It's just the way of it, And this was a really weird movie in that literally it just sort of came together so quickly. Christina, we went out to cast, and I think even before we really went and sort of did any lists or anything, Christina, it had come across to Christina, and she loves the first movie, and she was like, look, I just want to be in this, I want to be in this movie. So she jumped on board, and she's a very strong woman, so there would be times where I'd come on set and I'd be like, hey Christina, how about we do it this way? and then she'd just stare at me, and I'd be like, "Oh, you do it your way." You know? But I loved her. She's the real deal. She's great, and just so she's got just incredible. When you put the camera on her, it's just amazing. And she's I've never worked with anybody quite like her, actually. I really enjoyed it. I'd love to work with her again.
And what's the future looking like for you? I know that, is there a 48 metres down in the works at the moment?
Yeah, we've got the script there, and we're all greenlit and ready to go. It's the descent underwater, basically. It's a group of cave divers trapped in an underwater city with sharks, and that's going to be fucking scary. So, yeah, we'll probably start shooting that. I've got a movie to shoot first called 13 O'Clock, I think. Hopefully that's going sort of now, imminently. And then I think once that's done, then we look at 48 metres.
That's quite exciting. The descent meets Jaws underwater. That's pretty sold it to me already.
Yeah, it's going to be... I learned to cave dive while I was doing 47 metres down, and it's the most terrifying thing in the world. It's just... It's insane. Why people would do that as a hobby, I don't know. And yeah, adding sharks, it's going to be a pretty scary movie, that for sure.
And for anyone that's listening to this podcast that's thinking of getting into the film industry, what sort of advice can you give for anyone that wants to be a film director or a filmmaker like yourself?
Don't be afraid of your influences. You know, the thing that gets me through the day, you know, I get a lot of flack, and I've had a lot of bombs and bad reviews, and you know, time not working and all that kind of stuff. Is remember why you got into it. And you know, I got into it to be Stephen King. I got into it to be John Carpenter, and you know, embrace that. I'm always amazed when I chat to someone and they say they want to be a filmmaker, and I say, oh, well, you know, who do you love? Who do you know, get up trying to be? And they're like, oh, no one. I just, you know, and it's like, oh, well, I always find that strange, you know.
Yeah.
Be whoever you want to be, whether it's like super cool, you know, whether you want to be Tarantino or whether you want to be, I don't know, the Farley brothers or something. Just, you know, whatever your love is, you know, just sort of embrace that, and it'll come through, I think. That would be my advice, you know. And always work. Just try any, you know, just anything you can do. Just keep just trying to put a camera on something, and then other work will come.
My final question for you today is, what do you think about the model at the moment with stuff like Annihilation going straight to Netflix and big films from, you know, literally Mute went straight to Netflix? Are you kind of loving the way that the industry's changing and not everything's going straight to the big screen, or are you kind of against it, and would you prefer that your releases are always seen on the biggest screen possible?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty lucky in that the last, I think particularly the way the movies that I'm doing are really big screen orientated. There was a great article basically calling them drive-in movies. You know, they're just communal experiences. And I'm massive about that. I think that's the way it should be. But yeah, I mean, you know, things are changing. You know, Netflix are bigger than all the studios put together, I think. Yeah, it's a weird one. You know, watching movies like Bright that cost you know, huge sums of money, or Annihilation, and they're doing their brief cinema thing, but then they're all about Netflix. And that's, yeah, it's a crazy changing world. I don't know what I feel about it, to be honest. I mean, the great thing is with Netflix, you can make movies that never could have been made before. So I sat and watched Gerald's Game the other day, which is just phenomenal. But that could, you know, no one was ever funding that really for the big screen. Especially, you know, over the last few years. So that it is great to see that, you know, there's an outlet for a slightly offbeat, you know, experience like that. But yes, it'll be interesting to see what the next sort of 5-10 years brings to the world of cinema. But it's definitely it's becoming a tougher and tougher landscape to get your movies out onto the big screen, which is maybe a shame. I'm not a big fan of comic book movies, and they just are sucking the air out of the room, and that's a bit sad. So it's great to see something like Quiet Place sort of cutting through that.
I've only just seen that this week, and it absolutely blew my mind. I can't believe how good that film was. I just was left speech. Amazing. Okay, so my next final question. Looking back, is there a film that you would love to have remade in your kind of career? Is there something that, would... It's a difficult one because you wouldn't want to ruin an absolute classic, but is there a film that you would love to have a go at remaking?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple... I always try and get Sony to let me remake Christine.
Oh, yes.
Which is why I did Strangers. Because Strangers really rips off Christine a lot. And you'll see it in the movie. It's a director that's just wanting to make Christine. And yeah, I absolutely adore that movie, and I think it would be fun to do it. I'd probably, if it ever came to fruition, I'd be terrified because I absolutely love the original. But yeah, something like that would be great fun. And maybe tackle. I'd love to tackle something like Leviathan, where a movie that wasn't quite so successful in its execution, but was great fun when I grew up as a kid to watch movies like that. So I'm open to redoing any of those movies.
Thank you for your time today. I wish you all the luck with the release in the UK of Pray at Night. I've seen the film, I absolutely loved it, and it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It was great speaking.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and Johannes, and it's so cool that he's joined me. And as you know, I will never turn down interview opportunities, so it was so great that this one came along. I wanted to get it recorded, edited and out there straight away, especially as the film right now is out there in UK cinema. So I thought, what better timing is it that get it out there right now so it's nice and fresh. As always, everyone, I really do appreciate your feedback. I know that it takes a while to kind of jump on social media sometimes and find the time to leave comments, but it's why I do it. I read every single tweet, every Facebook comment, every email. Anything that you send, I will read. I will retweet you. I will send it out as much as I can to the big wider world. But just to know that you listen and enjoy the episodes is amazing. And to know that I'm already on episode 32 blows my mind. It's insane. The good thing right now is I've got some more episodes recorded over the last few weeks. I'm going to be delving into the music kind of industry again, because after speaking to IMX and Kat Von D, I got this real taste of speaking to musicians and bands again. So with it being a pop culture podcast, there's no kind of boundaries. So I'm really looking forward to getting them out there for you in the next few weeks. I have got a Patreon site up there. I've got about 26% of my first target achieved now, so everyone that's kind of pledged so far, please keep it coming because it really is appreciated. It means I can invest in more equipment, I can get train fare to go and interview people all over the country. I invest it all back into the podcast. I don't make any money off it, so every single Patreon that signs up, it really is a huge help. And again, you've probably seen on there right now, there's competitions to win t-shirts, there's competitions to win Funko Pops. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that I value you all and give you opportunities to win some really cool stuff for that money that you invest. So as I said, as you know right now, episodes are coming really fast, so expect a new episode in only probably 1 or 2 weeks' time. Thanks again for listening today, and I hope you all have a great couple of weeks, and I'll speak to you all again soon.
All the way. Should still